Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to this panel today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Francisco Mingorance. I'm the Secretary General of CISPE.cloud, cloud infrastructure service provider in Europe. We are here today to present the second version of the handbook Buying Cloud Services in Public Sector. This handbook is designed to provide guidance to support public authorities when they procure cloud services. The first version of the handbook was presented to the European Commission in the summer of 2019 and subsequently translated in various languages and presented in member states after that. Today, we are presenting the version of the handbook, Handbook 2.0, an updated version which takes into account recent regulatory developments and also new trend in the cloud computing market. I'm joined on the panel today by a group of distinguished experts who have all contributed to the development of the new version of the handbook and who will each in their own field present several of the new critical requirements that have been added to the handbook to make it more helpful for public procurer. By order of presentation, I will briefly introduce them. We will have Alban Schmutz, who is with OVH, who is also the president of CISPE. I'm sure you're all familiar. And Alban will give us a bit of the history and background behind the CISPE handbook. So this will be the first panelist. The second panelist will be Ruud Allert, who is Managing Director of the Dutch Cloud Community and one of the early supporters of the handbook. Ruud will explain how the principle for first software licensing that CISPE has been promoting over the last couple of years have been incorporated in the handbook and how this requirement and principle can help public procurer avoid lock-in with certain software application they need. Ruud will be followed by a presentation from Aise Yavuz, associate partner at Ernst & Young Certify Point. Aise and Ernst & Young are among the three accredited monitoring bodies that can certify cloud service declared under the CISPE GDPR Code of Conduct. And these provide additional assurance to public procurer that such services meet the GDPR requirement. They also enable public procure to store and process the data exclusively in Europe. And I think Isa is very keen to present this new and rather unique system of monitoring bodies that are being created at this occasion. Isa will be followed by Peter Paul Schroeder, who is here on behalf of NDC Gabri and will be speaking on behalf of the German Data Center Association. Thank you for joining us, Peter. Peter will present the sustainability requirements which have been incorporated in the new handbook. And finally, after the short presentation from each of the panelists, I will invite Pierre Chastanet, who is head of unit for cloud computing in the European Commission, DG Connect, to take the floor. Pierre was also present back in 2019 when we released the first code, and we are delighted to have him today with us. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we go into the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session, and we invite all of you attending this panel to send us the question using the conference Q&A chat. With no further ado, I invite Alban Schmutz to speak. Thank you, Alban.
Can you please unmute yourself, Alban?
Alban, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yeah, I suppose yes. So sorry for being on mute. So hi everyone. So thanks Francisco for your introduction, and welcome everyone for joining this session. So I will briefly introduce you to this handbook. It's updated version 2.0, which is something very important for buying cloud services across Europe. since in the public sector, since this is something very strategic for Europe. Cloud services are today at the foundation of both the digital transformation and the green transition. So we need to succeed in both across Europe, and especially in the public sector, which is, I would say, a massive importance for both the citizens, but also the industry and all the underlying ecosystem which is fostering cloud services across Europe. So helping procuring cloud services, I would say, on a better way with the good practices is something very important. So procuring cloud services is not like procuring on-premise infrastructure. It's not about buying hardware or software you are putting in your basement to operate them yourself. The question is about the speed, how you can integrate the added value brought by cloud providers easily in your process, and how you are going to be able to bring the added value to all your internal process, all your internal, I would say, buyers, project managers, project development teams, etc. So that's why we thought it was a good thing to develop some guidance across, I would say, to be used by public buyers to define what are the good RFPs for cloud services, and to define some good practices there to help public buyers. It's not an easy sport to go along, and so good practices is always something very interesting to have. So what we have been doing there is basically dividing all the requirements that needs to be part of a cloud procurement process, including the technical specification, questions regarding security, data protection, sustainability, fair software, we'll come back to that as well, but also on the pricing and how to do and to organize mini competitions, for example, over time, where you can have several providers competing to each other over time in the same process. So that's very important to give the speed of the cloud and the added value of the cloud in that process in public services, where it's not always easy to, I would say, to do in terms of speed and to have the right way to do things. This handbook has not been developed based on a specific regulation in a specific country. So it's good practices that can be applied everywhere. There are some examples of wording that can be used in RFPs, could be copy-pasted or adapted to the local situation, but just to not to forget what are the main points to address and how to address them and what can be done based on the experience we have. So Francisco asked me also to present a bit, I would say, the team behind this. And basically, so all the providers that have been grouping around this topic are working already with public services a lot. And this is a huge user of cloud services. Nevertheless, we thought that there are a category of public buyers that will need more help than others. And that's why we all package this into that handbook 2.0. On key updates regarding the previous version. So the previous version, as Francisco stated, has been released in 2019. And there are some developments that thought we wanted to take on board and are very important. First of them, not I would say in order of importance, but the first of them is the raise of the question of sustainability. And so 1 year ago, a climate neutral data center pact have been launched by the industry to ensure that the data center and cloud industry will be climate neutral by 2030. So we thought that this needs to be embedded in the good practices of, I would say, buying cloud services. So that pact has been launched with the support of EVP Timmermans and so the European Commission. So it's very important to address those topics, and we'll come back to that afterwards. A second, a very important milestone that has been reached also last year, the European Data Protection Board, which is the authority gathering all national data protection authorities, has, I would say, approved data protection codes of conduct for cloud computing. So this is also something very important to take into account. No, there are tools to go that route. And also a third development is regarding fair licensing, since when you buy cloud services, when you buy, I would say, licensing to use cloud services of, I would say, software, I would say, on the upper layer of the stack, the question is, what should you expect from your suppliers? So that questions have been incorporated in the pact, in the handbook, and we'll go through all this. Maybe one last point before handing over to Ruth. I wanted to mention also, this handbook does not include references, for example, to a labeling process from Gaia-X that has been announced by Gaia-X, which is a big cloud project across Europe. So the labeling framework has been announced back in November already. Since this is not already implemented, so as the handbook is something very hands-on, so we are relying here only on, I would say, what is available already on the market and in production. So just to avoid that and to be clear on that question. So I really, again, wanted to thank you all to participate, and the document will be available on the website right after this presentation, and I'm happy to hand over to Ruth.
Thank you, Alban. Thank you for keeping the time. Much appreciated. Ruud, I think it's your turn. I'd like you to jump straight into the topic, please. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Francisco. Good morning, everyone. Well, representing the Dutch companies who deliver cloud services to their customers in the Netherlands and abroad, we encounter a number of, let us say, well, challenges with large market players of license-based products. These vendors really are dominant in several market segments like cloud platforms, productivity or office suites, and in business applications. Our members often are in partnership with these large vendors and resell their products to their customers. Also, organizations in the public sector are in there. The companies we represent, big and small, innovate based on the products of large vendors and provide the end customer, also public sector organizations, with a rich choice of services. Unfair licenses practices of several legacy software vendors are increasingly preventing these ecosystems to be innovative, which is a key point. We are worried about the way these vendors, having a market dominant position, go about their partners. Our member organizations to gain even more control over the market and the cloud-based offerings that are available. It is not in the interest of our members nor their customers to have this kind of market influencing activities. They basically disturbs the level playing field that should be there for cloud service providers to compete in, and for the customers to be able to choose between various offerings. We know there are concerns on this situation both in the public sector organizations and in the private sector. Let me mention to you a few examples of what these dominant vendors are doing. These examples are brought to our attention by our member organizations who have big concerns about this, but cannot or dare not to oppose on this towards this vendor. Because of fearing this will result in countermeasures of the vendor seriously affecting their current business or related costs. First example, audits on use of licenses. Audits is done by the vendor on use of licenses by our members are usually being done on a foreseeable frequency. However, there are many examples of sudden audits that are being used as a means of pressure to force the partner to comply with or new or changed licensing programs. This all is accompanied with the threat of substantial penalties. Another example is the claiming of unfair rights based on their license agreements, urging partners to give up on privacy guarantees for the data of their customers when the vendor claims the right based on licensing agreements for having access to the systems of the customer in order to do audits. So they want to be able to get their way into data centers where the data of customers is of course stored and being made operational, and they want that access on license terms, based on license terms. And of course there's a big privacy problem which is legally based. A third example, combining product offerings to create an advantage. Well, when a customer is interested in a certain cloud-based services, vendors offer a substantial discount or free access to another important service or product offering. So they combine a few products. Because of their market dominant position, they are able to do this. But it creates an unleveled market situation, looking at this from a partner perspective. And a last and fourth example is uncomparable license pricing. A vendor can undermine the position of a partner, which is our member, of course, being an industry organization, when they are offering a lesser pricing for the same product, but doing this under the terms of a licensing model they are able to offer directly to the end customer. So the end customer already has a sales relation with our partner, with our member organization, and at the same time, this partner is bound by the indirect licensing model they must work with towards their end customer, and of which the costs are clearly higher compared to the direct offering of the vendor. And in addition to that, let me add to that, vendors are not only combine product offerings to establish an advantage, but also based on the intelligence they have of their partner relations, they directly target relations of the partner, so bypassing their partner and their own partner network. To conclude all this, we welcome this handbook because it includes the fair principles of software licensing so that procurement teams can ask the right questions and score RFPs in ways that protect their choice and ability to combine software and services from multiple vendors. Not only does this prevent login and overexposure to single vendors, but it allows them to specify and select the exact bespoke cloud IT setup they want and need. Thank you. Back to you, Francesco.
Thank you, Ruud, for presenting and highlighting how the fair software licensing principles have been included in the in Handbook 2.0. I think we will continue working on this topic in the coming weeks and months. And since I've heard from public procurers in many places and recently in Spain, that this is really a helpful addition to the handbook and that they are facing similar problems. I'll come back with question to you on this topic at the end.
Sure.
I'd like to invite Isa to come and tell us more about the GDPR component that have been included in the Handbook 2.0 and also the role of the monitoring bodies in ensuring monitoring and ensuring compliance with GDPR. Isa, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Francisco. Indeed, data protection still remains to be a high priority in the agendas of all cloud service users as well as the service providers. And cloud service providers have been and they are still looking for ways to build trust with its users, buyers of their services, and bring further clarity and transparency. And EY Certify Point is the independent monitoring body with this key role of establishing this trust through a very detailed compliance assessment against the requirements of the CISPE Code of Conduct, which is followed by a report. And perhaps there are a few things that I could highlight around the CISPE Code of Conduct to give a bit of clarity. And it's also, of course, its approach towards the monitoring activities that it includes. First of all, it is important to mention that the code itself is very industry specific. And obviously, if you look at cloud, it's quite a generic and a general terminology when it comes to GDPR, because the GDPR implications can be different for specific types of cloud services, such as what GDPR means for infrastructure can differentiate from SaaS and PaaS, obviously. And that's why it is important to mention that the code defines the specific requirements for infrastructure service providers and what the users of these services or the buyers can expect from them from a GDPR application perspective. And related to that like the specifics, the other thing that is perhaps important to mention is that the code gives the option for retention and processing of the data within the European Economic Area. And coming to the monitoring body point, there is one important angle also to highlight is that the code defines the choice of fully independent monitoring bodies. And there is a stringent accreditation process that all the monitoring bodies that needs to go through the accreditation process of French Data Protection Authority, CNIL, based on its set of accreditation requirements, which are also ratified by the EU Data Protection Board to ensure independence and impartiality, which CNIL is quite clear on its expectations for that. And obviously the handbook today just includes the guidelines that are related and in line with this code itself, and gives the right references. Handing it over to you, Francisco. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about this.
Thank you, Aisha. You have been very brief. You still have a couple of minutes left. I have questions for you. I think maybe before I hand over to Peter, would you say something about the value of having monitoring bodies certifying the conformity of services? How do you see this value, or what do you hear from user or customers? Could you say something about this, maybe?
Yeah, indeed, of course, and that's why I wanted to highlight the trust. Indeed, that's why we value our role as a fully independent monitoring body, just with the key responsibility to establish that trust. And having kind of a guideline like the code or other mechanisms that the handbook also gives reference to is quite important, because that gives clarity and transparency about the expectations, indeed, about like what a service organization, service provider needs to implement. And our role as an independent and impartial monitoring body is really to go there and audit these implementations of these practices in a very detailed and critical assessment, and issue a report at the end, and that report and that audit constitutes as an example of what the service buyers can look at with regards to just building confidence towards the service provider when they are buying or using the specific services of infrastructure, in this case, cloud infrastructure service provider. That's why with this equation of the users, the service providers, and obviously the buyers as well, we believe that the independent monitoring body mechanism is quite important to increase the credibility of this trust that is established within the ecosystem. And I highlighted the importance of independence, because that is really important, that the audit is also handled and performed with utmost professionalism, and with the appropriate standards to be followed.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you very much. We'll come back to you with more questions. So we've talked about, we're talking about procuring cloud infrastructure services, which are the foundation of the digital economy of our digital home. Ruth told us about, lock-in and making sure that, in this house, in this built on the foundation of cloud infrastructure, that your windows and your door open properly, that there is no interoperability or lock-in problem. You've told us, Aisha, how to make sure that the key of the house are safe, and that public procurer of cloud infrastructure services have the confidence to use GDPR compliant services. I will ask Peter Paul Schroeder to tell us, how to make sure that the house is climate neutral. And without further ado, Peter, please tell us more about your views on that matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Francisco. First of all, congratulations for finalizing the CISPE handbook on how to buy cloud services. We, as GDA, clearly value this as an important step, standardizing Europe's digitization. And we see this as an additional step to what you already achieved in setting up CISPE's Code of Conduct for Software Initiative and the CNDCP, the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact, and of course, founding the Gaia X initiative. As German Data Center Association, we aim to provide not only communication platform for our industry, but also to communicate requirements, expectations, and our possibilities amongst all stakeholders. And while listening to citizens and politicians, we identified a broad lack of knowledge about our data center industry, and we consider this to be the reason for a rising opposition experienced in the regions of data center agglomerations that we have seen, that led to the moratorium in Amsterdam, that we currently see in Dublin, and which is also rising in Frankfurt. So while no one seems to be aware of our industry's high efficiency, our resource consumption, especially the need for land and electrical power, is flagged in the public. As a result, regional and federal parliaments start regulative initiatives that in many cases are little helpful for our data center industry. So we as GDA, we consider the proof of our industry's efforts on sustainable business operations to be key to gain the public acceptance for our business. So as sustainability is inherent in cloud computing, and moving to the cloud provides an energy efficiency gain in comparison to the older on-premise service or enterprise data centers. Cloud services can help improve the sustainability. And however, it is essential that the infrastructures supporting these cloud services are also highly sustainable. And still many tenders for individual solutions are lacking supply. So what we see with your handbook is clearly the new Bible to standardize these processes and to increase the sustainability of our industry. So especially many older data centers used by the public sector on premise are not very efficient and make significant contribution to CO2 emissions and climate damage. And moving to modern, more efficient clouds can dramatically improve this situation. This is why we currently set up a national register on data centers resource consumption and efficiency, the so-called UBA register in Germany. And together with the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact as an industry-led voluntary agreement to define, comply with, and enforce strict standards for sustainability, we think to make major improvements in our resource consumption. And since over 90% of our industry in Europe has now signed up to this Climate Neutral Data Center Pact, committing to 100% sustainable electricity, high levels of energy and water usage efficiency, reuse of resources, repair of IT hardware, and the recycling of it. So integrating the goals and commitments of the CNDCP into the handbook provides public sector buyers with a clear framework to assess the environmental performance of any cloud providers they seek to contract with. And we think this is, as I stated before, the absolute basis for the future improvement of our industry. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Peter, for highlighting the importance of the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact requirement included in the handbook. I think you are the last industry speaker here, and I would like now, without any other form of ceremony, invite Pierre Chastanet to join us. Pierre has been already with us in 2019. He has, patiently and trustfully followed and supported our work, and Pierre is with us today for the handover of the handbook version 2.0. Pierre, please welcome again, and please, the floor is yours. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and many thanks from Cisco for the invitation and the introduction. Congratulations to CISPE and its member for this second version of the handbook on buying cloud infrastructure in the public sector. We really appreciate your perseverance in pursuing continuous improvement on this document, building on the very good basis of the first version that was published in 2019. I had the chance to be present at the occasion of the handover of the first version of this document. Maybe to point out as well that we appreciate the effort that you did at this time to translate this handbook. We're talking about public procurement, so making this sort of document accessible to national, but also regional, local authorities is something very important. Public procurement is really not trivial. It's something that the Commission is working on for many years on all its facets. And it indeed concerns public administration of all levels. So we really welcome the initiative of cloud infrastructure provider in CISPE to have developed this in the first place and then improved it, taking stock of the rapid development in that very dynamic sector that is cloud infrastructure. In this new version, you have really improved the practicality of the use of the handbook, notably further developing the possible sample RFPs, which makes it almost plug and play for public procurers to be able to include specific requirement in their tender, also ensuring through this alignment with European law. We note that you have really taken into account important aspect of cloud infrastructure procurement in the document for what pertains to data protection, to cybersecurity, portability, switchability of service provider. It's not acceptable today that users get locked into with their vendor. And notably when it's public administration. You have factored in a pricing aspect, contractual fairness, and finally environmental aspect, which is a factor that is way too often forgotten in public procurement. So of course you've been building on the climate neutral data center pact, where CISPE, but also many other private actors have committed themselves. The Commission welcome this initiative on the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact. So it's a positive sign that the data processing industry in Europe is taking environmental and energy aspect very, very seriously. And I'm happy to see that this has been factored back into the handbook for buying cloud infrastructure services. From a Commission perspective, cloud is absolutely essential for the modernization of the public sector. It's a key step to foster the digital transformation of the public sector. But again, coming back to the priority of our president, we must ensure the twin transition. So digital transformation, but also the green transition together. And this can also be done when public administration are buying data processing capacities. Member states will spend a huge amount of money in digital technologies, notably using the resilience and recovery facility. So they will develop data processing capacities at national level. We estimate currently that about 2/3 of the investment that will be made at national level on cloud and edge capacities will be spent for the public sector to foster public sector modernization. So we must get this right. This is really a unique opportunity for Europe. We must get this right. So member states need some form of guidance in that respect in the way they will buy this data processing capacity. We do expect that this will also have a positive spillover effect on the rest of the European economy in terms of cloud buying practices and digital transformation. So the public authorities have to lead by example. The way they are buying and the type of service data processing services they will buy will have an effect on the broader European economy. The European Commission has kicked off just before Christmas the European Alliance on Industrial Data, Edge and Cloud. Under this alliance, the Commission has launched a dedicated working group for the public sector, where we only have representatives of public authorities, of different levels of public administration, so national, regional, and some local. And under this working group, where we will be discussing national cloud strategies and other aspects of cloud-based digital transformation, cloud public procurement is an absolute priority for us. It is the objective of the Commission, and this was highlighted already in the European Data Strategy of 2020, that the Commission will deliver guidance on cloud public procurement for the member state in the course of 2022. So the CISPE handbook that is handed over today for cloud infrastructure buying is really a great first step towards this direction, and we're very grateful for you to having worked out on this impressive document. So really looking forward pursuing the cooperation with you, and most importantly to have it used by public buyers. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Pierre. Much appreciated. I think every speaker has done a tremendous job of keeping with the time. So we will now have I think a more of a discussion between the panelists and taking questions from the group. I would like to have a couple of questions that have come on the forum. I have my own question. I'd like to start maybe this discussion with by inviting Pierre to react to a couple of points. I think you mentioned a lot, leading by example for the public sector, cloud public procurement of cloud services and infrastructure being critical for many of the ambitions and goals of the EU. I would like to also, I noted, the translation. Very important. We did translate the handbook in, I think 6 or 7 local languages. We will do the same thing now. And I would like to ask you in terms of, the Commission's view this morning in relation to public sector cloud procurement. So what would be, and leading by example, what are your aspirations, and what is towards what are you aiming in terms of taking these best practices and leading by example when it comes to public procurement, and how can we as an organization, and how can we use the handbook maybe to provide more assistance or elements that are useful for public procurement across Europe. And of course it will be translated in at least 6 different languages. Pierre, please.
So this handover is a great first step, and I really encourage you to disseminate this very, very broadly across Europe. Reaching out to national public buyers is not simple, demands a lot of efforts. So don't stop there. Go to the walk the next mile. Go to the capitals. Go to the regional authorities, local authorities, of course, with limited resources at your disposal. This is complex, but I'm sure you will be able to leverage your members to also disseminate this locally. Of course, on the Commission side, we will do our job. It's our mandate to develop this European guidance. So, of course, we will be working on this aspect, and we will consult, of course, the procurers of all levels, but also the service provider, because this has to be workable eventually by the service providers that are operating in Europe. Just to make another mention that this can be extremely useful for another category of user, which are SMEs. You know, when you're an SME and you need data processing capacities, very frequently you don't have a big procurement department that can start developing for you fancy contracts or undertake difficult negotiation with service providers. So I think this sort of handbook can also be very useful to small, medium-sized enterprises as a guide for them to look at the sort of things they should watch out when buying services, cloud services.
Merci, Pierre. I'd like to continue with my round of questions and also invite the audience to drop any question they may want to raise. I've got a couple of them in the Q&A chat. I will gladly relay this to the panel. Let me ask maybe a question for Alban, because we're talking of translation and promoting this handbook at the national level. Alban, so now that we have updated this handbook, what do you think CISPE should do or engage into to promote it more broadly in Europe and also with local authorities? Would you like to react on that? Because I know we're going to have this discussion sooner than later.
Yeah, I'm happy to react on that and to and thank again Pierre, I would say, for welcoming this work and for the advice of going to the capital and regional and local level to I would say to make that work also known. I think this is not only about CISPE. I think this is about I would say all of our cloud ecosystem. So cloud procurement is not known by all public buyers. So this handbook can be used, I would say, by anyone when engaging in the discussion with public buyers on the topic here. And I would say the guidelines are agnostic and just highlighting what are the main questions to raise and to be answered. So it can be used by anyone. And that's how I'm going to answer your question, Francisco, is what we have to do is, I would say, as trade association, as CISPE, but other trade associations, I think we have a role to go and speak to, I would say, central authorities, central buyers about that, and to share that information so they can use it where required. But I think this is also a great tool that can be leveraged by any member of our organizations, by salespeople, pre-sales, or whatever, to be able to engage with their own customers or leads, to advocate on the topic and to explain, oh, this is, I would say, good practices that make sense for the whole ecosystem. It's not, I would say, provider specific. So I think this is very important, and I stop here. But I think we can leverage both the approach of trade associations and members to go through it, and I think the support of the European Commission here, I think, is something very useful on this with this pass as well.
Thank you, Alban. So you and I are not going to go on a Europe-wide tour promoting the code with local authorities, or are we?
Sorry, Francisco, maybe it's my connection, but I didn't hear the first part of your. No.
Okay, so I will repeat. I was asking, are you or me or both of us going on a tour in Europe to promote this, with the handbook in our hands, as CISPE and with other partners, or is it something?
I think in the COVID time, I think the tour, I think, may be limited. it may be a video conferencing tool. I don't know, it would be great to have a tour in Europe, but not sure we have the opportunity to do this as much as we would like to do. So, but at least setting up the right meetings on this, I think would be clearly making sense for everyone.
Thank you. I'd like to have to turn to Ruud and ask him in relation to, do you hear me, Ruud? Because I think you had some difficulties with the sound.
I can hear you. Yeah, thank you.
Super. So you gave us some example of this unfair licensing practices, also locking. Do you, in your experience with the Dutch cloud community, do you also see the same type of problem in both the public sector and in the private sector, or are there nuances or differences?
There are a few differences, but we see it in a very general way. So it both happens and occurs in the private sector as it does in the public sector. But maybe the projects and the size of the projects is they are much bigger in the public sector. So there's more on stake there. So I think these kinds of procurement guides are very important for a sector as the public sector. And maybe one of the topics is going on the lock-in of course in certain dominant vendors. And that's, I think, one of the most important aspects for the public sector, because the lifting and shifting workloads in the large organizations like public sector is a key topic.
Thank you. Just, top of your head, do you think that DMA can help the Digital Market Act to address some of this, lock-in, bundling, tying, which are systemic, let's say, behavior and unfair practice?
Yeah, surely it can, because on the one hand, it can help public sector organizations in providing them with the right playing field to choose their offerings, and on the other hand, it can influence the behavior of those dominant market players towards the end market, and of course to their partners.
Thank you, Ruud. I would like to, since we have covered many different topics, I would like to go back to GDPR compliance for cloud infrastructure services, and invite Ayse to answer, maybe address the following, because you mentioned a lot clarity and transparency. And so I would like to ask you, how does this handbook and the inclusion of the CISPE GDPR Code of Conduct requirement into the handbook and its RFPs, how does that help organization like yours, like EY Certify Point, to perform your auditing task and fulfill these related responsibilities? Can you explain a little bit more how that works?
Yes, Francisco, thank you. Of course, and I think we are very well aware of our responsibility indeed. I have mentioned transparency and clarity. Obviously, I know what it means, and we know what it means as an organization, because in different capacities, we have been establishing that transparency and building confidence in the market in the past, in different domains from over 100 years, obviously, as an organization. And now, obviously, we're talking about cloud infrastructure, and that transparency, clarity, independent monitoring by the mechanisms, and all these are slightly new to the industry. However, the need is there. And the handbook obviously takes the code and makes it part of the very initial interaction stage between the user, the buyer, versus the obviously the provider, service provider, and that's why it is really important that that expectation is established with clarity and transparency at that initial stage of that relationship between the buyer and the service provider, and our role how I see our role is that to make sure that we come with our impartial and independent view as a monitoring body to establish that trust at the very initial stage. So indeed, it makes our life easier because the awareness around the need of such a mechanism will exist with these types of handbooks, the codes, and the awareness related to that. So that's what I can say that is really important also for us to take on board, but also for the organizations to take on board related to transparency and the clarity that is needed. And handbook plays an important role with that, including the code and giving reference to the independence of the monitoring bodies.
Yes, since you speak about independence, EY Certify Point is one of 3 currently accredited monitoring body, and I can mention them because we were not doing an exclusive, but there's Bureau Veritas, who's also very well known, and there's a French auditing company called LNE. All of these are on the website. I have a question with this. Do you think this is this approach with monitoring body under the GDPR? Is this something rather new, and also is this a model that you think can be applied to other codes, other GDPR code of conduct in other, let's say, sector above and beyond the cloud infrastructure sector?
Correct, and I have been already reached out by various different industries, even outside technology, to ask about how the monitoring body structures could be worked, just to share our view. And indeed, that choice of freedom is part of the independence and impartiality, obviously. Otherwise, so any organization can choose its service provider when it comes to the auditing services and monitoring services. And that is quite crucial to make sure that that independence is established. And the second thing that is really important to mention about this mechanism, that every year together with CNIL, like we sharpen ourselves as monitoring bodies and have discussions. So that's the plan actually, because now we are in our first year. So at the end of this year, we will reflect back and then see what can be further improved, what are the things that we need to do going forward. And I think that is really important in the establishment of a monitoring body mechanism to give that freedom of choice, to have multiple monitoring bodies, plus ensuring the independence with a complete independent supervisory authority. In this case, is CNIL. So that's why we are happy to be part of this structure as a monitoring body.
Thank you. This is interesting, a very innovative model. I would like to turn to Peter on the sustainability part and the climate neutrality, without being, without meaning any offense or any, undue criticism. I mean, we know, it's known that public sector data centers are often less efficient than, more recent, newer data center. So there is clearly an opportunity for public sector to move to cloud and to new cloud infrastructure services and data center. And I would like to ask you, Peter, what would be your message to public procurement teams and how they should use this handbook and particularly the section on sustainability to achieve the twin transition, as Pierre put it, and the green part of the twin transition. Peter, the floor is yours.
Yes. So first of all, I think since the handbook provides transparency as well as a very well balanced overview of on cloud services, we expect the CISPE handbook to generally encourage public institutions to get a better feeling of the positive impact of cloud services. And hence, we expect the handbook to increase the willingness of decision makers to buy cloud services. And moreover, I think this is very important and aiming to what you asked, it is actually putting cloud services in the context with resource saving, energy efficiency, and an important step towards climate neutrality. And I think with our industry, we are probably the only industry that is aiming at being climate neutral at 2030. And So my message to the public procurement teams would be that moving into the cloud not only increases the physical efficiency, but secures the climate neutrality and at the soonest possible point of time. And I would clearly point out that it needs the public first movers to underline our parliament's messages sent out these days.
Thank you very much. We're getting to the end of the hour, and I have two more questions that came on the Q&A chat. One is about Gaia-X. CISPE is a member of Gaia-X, and the question is, how will the service and frameworks created by Gaia-X fit in this handbook, or vice versa? Maybe Alban can answer that. And the other question is, please, is this handbook publicly available, and how? And could you share the link? So that was my second question, and I think we cannot physically hand over the handbook. Unfortunately, that's the reason why we're having this panel online. But I'd like to, maybe conclude after the answer to these two questions, conclude with a virtual handover of the handbook to Pierre and to the European Commission. So maybe quickly answer the first question about Gaia-X and how the service fits the handbook, or vice versa. And then before we hand over and close this panel, just practical information on how to get something that is not physical, but that can be shared virtually. I don't know, maybe Alban, you can jump in on the Gaia question.
So I will try to be quick on this one. Gaia-X, which is I would say probably one of the largest collaborative tech projects in Europe currently, and definitely the largest one in cloud, gathering more than 300 I would say organizations. Is a question that is very important. So Gaia-X develops a set of I would say a set of reference standards, of reference requirements that are welcomed to put Gaia-X services, so Gaia-X labeled services. So each provider will be able to fulfill requirements regarding Gaia-X. So how the handbook and Gaia-X will work together? On the one hand, so once the requirements will be, I would say, stronger and available on the market, I think we will incorporate them in a further version of the handbook. First one. On the other hand, what we have in the handbook already includes some of the requirements that Gaia-X will want to cover. For example, including requirements on data protection, on portability, questions regarding security are already part, I would say, of what will be part of the framework of Gaia-X, and are already part also of the handbook. So applying what's proposed by the handbook is a way to prepare, I would say, for the next stage when you're going to want to procure Gaia-X labeled services. If you already apply the guidance of the handbook, I would say the gap will be limited to a certain to what is not already on the market. So I stop here.
Thank you. What about, where is the handbook available? Can someone maybe Ben? I think Ben Menard, our Director of Communication. I don't know if Ben is online.
I am online. I don't know if you can see me. It is available on the CISPE.cloud website. It's actually currently updating now, so it should be available there within 20 minutes or so as the new version clicks over. We're going to keep the existing versions up because, as you say, we have the first version in multiple languages. At the moment, we only have the new edition in English, but we will be populating the other languages as they're translated over the coming weeks.
Thank you very much. We are nearing the end of the panel. I want to again take the opportunity to thank all the panelists for the time and for the participation, which has made this session very, very interesting. Maybe I don't know if Pierre, did you succeed in getting a physical version of the handbook, something we can use for a group photo handover, or is it something that has not yet reached your desk?
No, not yet. The commission is going full electronic, so no paper anymore. We're becoming the paperless commission, so no physical copy, but we can do a virtual handover.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unless there are urgent or important comments or reaction, I would like to thank you all. Thank you for being here this morning, and we look forward to working with all of you, with the Commission and Pierre, and we will probably have to update our handbook when both the Gaia-X requirements are clear, and also those that will be probably part of the Commission cloud policy rulebook in the coming months, probably before the end of the year. So we look forward to having this dialogue with you. Thank you all. Have a great day, and see you very soon for version 3.0 of the handbook.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Francisco.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Have a nice day.
Many thanks and congratulations again. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.